Hello and welcome to the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show from the fine folks at Awful Announcing, where we are here to break down those much anticipated Super Bowl not rankings. I'm Drew Lerner, senior editor here at Awful Announcing, joined by Sam Newman, also a senior editor here at Awful Announcing, filling in, pinch hitting last minute for our guy Ben Axelrod, who was having some technical difficulties earlier in the day. Sam, I'm going to run through some of these Super Bowl ratings. I think there's a fair bit to talk about. Top line number, 124.9 million viewers across NBC, Telemundo, Peacock, NBC Sports Digital, and NFL Plus. That's down 2% from last year's number, 127.7 million on Fox for Eagles Chiefs. That is good for the second most watched Super Bowl in history. However, of course, we know there are lots of Nielsen caveats to go along with that. I think my top line takeaway, Sam, let me know if you agree with me, is it is hard to take these numbers seriously, considering the quality of both of the last two Super Bowls not particularly being strong, yet they are the two most watched in television history. To me, you can't really square that. It's got to be just taken with a huge grain of salt. What do you think?
I mean, I think, like you said, it's got to be taken with a grain of salt. The matchups weren't exactly compelling. I mean, on paper, last year obviously was more compelling, and this year wasn't. And I think we talked about kind of going into the playoffs about how this Super Bowl, unless we got some sort of matchup that matched up with some legacy brands, that we were probably looking at, that it was going to be the ratings were going to take a little bit of a hit, not like a substantial one, but I know our guy Manny had predicted that the ratings would be lower. I know there's a lot of methodology that's used now to kind of inflate those numbers. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that these were heavily watched and will undoubtedly be the most watched events of the year. But like you said, it's kind of hard to square with the quality that you're watching. But again, it is the Super Bowl, and people are going to watch. And not the first time the Super Bowl hasn't been, watchable, and it won't be the last. I mean, there's plenty of that over the years.
Right. I saw our guy John Lewis over at Sports Media Watch mention this on Twitter. It's only the third Super Bowl in a number of years, I can't remember how far back it went, that hasn't reached a 40 household rating. It came in as a 39 point something. And kind of by definition, the household rating doesn't take into effect some of the methodology changes that Nielsen has had. So when you look at that, you could actually see it as maybe one of the least watched Super Bowls in recent memory, all things being equal. I'm going to go through a little bit more of the data here. Viewership peaked in the second quarter, as it normally does, with 137.8 million viewers. That was just a smidge ahead of last year, which was 137.7 at its peak. NBC's touting it as the highest peak audience in U.S. television history, which sure by the data it is. But interestingly to me was that the halftime audience for Bad Bunny's performance actually went down 9.5 million viewers from that peak. The halftime show averaged 128.2 million viewers, compared to Kendrick Lamar last year. Similar situation, the peak, like I said, 137.7 for last year's Super Bowl. Kendrick Lamar only lost 4.2 million off of that peak. His halftime show averaged 133.5 million viewers. So Kendrick was able to hold on to about 5 million more viewers than Bad Bunny. Of course, we've discussed on this show the Turning Point USA counter programming with, the Kid Rock extravaganza. There's, of course, a lot of, politicking ahead of this year's halftime show. I'm going to say, Sam, I think it made a difference. Losing 9 million viewers from a peak in the second quarter to halftime compared to only losing 4 million viewers in that same time period last Super Bowl, to me, it seems like there was possibly a fair, not a fair amount. We're talking single digit percentages here of this total Super Bowl audience, but there's a handful of the audience that decided to tune out for halftime as compared to last year. And if you look at some of those Turning Point USA numbers, which of course aren't comparable to the Nielsen data that we're looking at for the Super Bowl, but they were getting around 6 million concurrent viewers across their streaming platforms for their Kid Rock halftime show. So it does kind of add up that, some people tune out of the Super Bowl, tune into the Turning Point USA halftime show. Do you think this made a difference, Sam?
Yeah, just to go off your point there, and you wonder how much more it would have been if X didn't have the issues
Right.
with getting the license there. I mean, obviously, I think it made a difference just because we've never had this before. Where in terms of like people have bemoaned about who the halftime artist is, but we've never had like counter programming. So obviously, there was going to be a numbers decrease. I don't know if we knew it would be this much. I don't know how much I'm putting into it just being like significant, just because again, counter programming. And two, you also have kind of a full-fledged campaign to kind of get people to boycott this or do something else with their time. Um, I don't know. It's kind of hard to square because you have to look at it from a global view and you have to look at it like there's so many other things. It's not just because this is Bad Bunny performing. It's because that there is, everything on top of that with people not wanting him to be the performer and also going a step beyond and saying, hey, we should have our own halftime show, or hey, we should turn on something else for 20 minutes, or hey, we should turn off the TV and go have a smoke for 20 minutes, stuff like that. I think once you put it in that context, it makes a little bit more sense. I think the numbers compared from last year went down 2%, maybe higher, maybe lower. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't do the math on that. But when you look at it, there was also no counter programming options with Kendrick Lamar. Granted, we heard a lot, not a lot, but we heard a little bit of the same talking points regarding Kendrick, and it didn't really seem to affect the halftime show, but that was because there was no counter programming. I think you guys had mentioned this on the play-by-play maybe earlier in the week where, it opened up the door for there being counter programming in the future, I guess, depending on who the artist is.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like there's multiple ways that you can look at this. I don't think that you could come out and outright and say, hey, like, this is a bust. Like, he lost this many viewers. The NFL made a wrong decision. And again, I'm not sure we have the global numbers quite yet either. So
We don't.
that could, that could add a lot more than what we're thinking because of the international impact. But the NFL is not looking at that from a viewership standpoint. They're looking at that how much of a global audience can we reach? And also, I had got something in my email maybe 20 minutes before we signed on, that there was a study that there was like an insane amount of bumps in people researching like Spanish and that sort of stuff. So in the United States, so it got kind of what they were looking for in terms of expanding globally, but also like kind of an interest from an American audience would be like, okay, I might not have listened to Bad Bunny before, but I'm willing to give it a shot, and people gave it a shot. I don't know. I just keep coming back to like it's just unprecedented, and there's nothing really that we can compare it to in the modern era.
Right. I think you're pretty spot on, and there's some data to back up what you're saying. If you look at the social media views, I think the NFL in its press release yesterday touted it was the most watched halftime show in terms of social media and digital presence in history. Hundreds of millions of people rewatching or watching the show for the first time. And also something that struck me. Maybe this is unsurprising, but Telemundo, who also carried the Super Bowl in Spanish language on behalf of NBC, viewership for their broadcast peaked during the Bad Bunny halftime show at 4.8 million viewers. They averaged 3.3 million for the whole Super Bowl. So that's like 1.5 million more viewers than the average for the whole show. So there's clearly an interest from the Latin American community. And just anecdotally, like my best friend is Puerto Rican, and she was sending me pictures of like her family in Puerto Rico who are all decked out in like Bonito NFL jerseys, like so excited to watch the Super Bowl halftime show. And I can almost guarantee you none of those people would probably be watching the Super Bowl on any normal year if Bad Bunny was not performing. So I agree with you. I think the Bad Bunny had its intended, it met his intended purpose for the NFL this year by kind of capturing a new audience.
There was another aspect that the NFL was touting, and obviously doesn't have to do with the halftime. Well, somewhat, but I think they had released that there was nearly 7 million people who tuned in to watch his press conference. So, I mean, that in itself just kind of shows to you like there's interest there. There was interest there. So, I don't know.
Yeah, just to put a bow on the Super Bowl ratings conversation here, I just kind of find it fascinating for people to kind of parse these numbers, just because nothing else really compares, and so does it really matter if the Super Bowl was watched by 110 or 115 or 130 million viewers? Because when you're looking at the next best programming on television that is not the NFL, like I'm going back to just a month ago, the College Football Playoff National Championship, widely regarded as a successful audience for Indiana, Miami, drew 30 million viewers, right? Like we're talking about 25% of a Super Bowl audience for what is the championship game of the second most popular sport in the United States. It's all just kind of gravy for the NFL, whether or not they can get a record high or only 124.9 million viewers like they did this year. To me, it's kind of all nonsense to parse it out like a lot of people do. But Sam, I want to move on to our second topic and final topic of the day, which is something that has taken the internet for quite a loop here in the last few days, and that is ESPN and MLB TV coming out with their packaging for this season. Sam, you're a big baseball fan. I believe you are also an MLB TV subscriber as a Mets fan living in South Carolina. So you are probably familiar with how things worked in the past. But this year it'll be a little bit different as part of ESPN's new media rights agreement with Major League Baseball. MLB is licensing MLB TV, which is the out-of-market streaming service, kind of similar to NFL Sunday Ticket, where fans that do not live in their team's local market can pay $150 per season. They can receive all of the out-of-market games from the league, stream it directly to their device. But it's a little bit different this year because it'll be on ESPN platforms. And for new users, so anyone that is not signed up for auto renewal from a previous season, they will also have to be ESPN Unlimited subscribers at least for a month. And let me explain that caveat. As part of the subscription process for MLB.tv, you will be signed up for ESPN Unlimited for 1 month for free. That subscription will then auto renew if you do not cancel it. So it seems to me, and I think to a lot of fans, like this is a bit of a mousetrap set up by Disney and ESPN to kind of capture unknowing, uneducated consumers that want MLB TV, have to now sign up through the ESPN app, and on top of that, get them into the ESPN Unlimited ecosystem for $30 a month. Now, there are some caveats. Like I said, if you're an existing subscriber, you do not have to go through this process. If you are a cable subscriber or a satellite subscriber and your provider has ESPN Unlimited access, you will not be required to sign up for the $30 monthly subscription because you already have it. But there are key providers like YouTube TV, Comcast customers still do not have it, though they should by the time baseball season rolls around. It just created some mass confusion. And I think, like, when you look at Major League Baseball's local rights situation overall, I think that's just what fans are most frustrated about right now, is especially with what's going on with Main Street, and all these FanDuel sports networks that are likely going to shut down in the coming months. Rights keep moving around. It's very complicated for fans to know how exactly to watch their teams. But Sam, I think it's pretty brazen what ESPN is trying to do here, in tandem with Major League Baseball. Wanted to get your thoughts as someone who subscribes to this and might have to subject themselves to figuring out how to jump through these hoops that ESPN is setting up for this service.
Yeah, Drew, I feel like any way that you square it, there's no way that you can come away with the observation that this is pro-consumer. It's very anti-consumer in the sense that you are making people sign up for a product that they might not necessarily want. And we can spin it any way you want it. But if people wanted to sign up for ESPN Unlimited and MLB TV, they would. It just creates, like you framed it in your story. They're making you jump through more hoops, and they're banking and maybe betting on the fact that people are not going to cancel their subscriptions because they're not going to remember it. When this information first came out and we were still kind of weeding through the details, I had called my dad and I was like, you need to put this on your radar. Just because I know for a fact that if he had $29.99 ESPN Unlimited on his credit card bill and he was not using it, he would be really pissed off. Come to find out, though, that if you are on auto renewal, which we have been, and we've been MLB TV subscribers since I believe like 2008, it shouldn't affect you. But the thing is aren't we going to have more fan bases on MLB TV this year, considering that MLB is producing a lot of broadcasts that have either decided to go with MLB or have been forced to go with the MLB because of what's happening with Main Street. So then you were going to have a bunch of new users who are going to have to sign up and not think about the ESPN Unlimited thing. And people can push back all they want about the double paywall, but like if you have to put in your credit card information, it's a paywall. It just is. It is, and and if you get charged once for it, that's a paywall. So, right. So even if you get charged once for it, that's $30 that you don't want to pay.
I think the thing is, like, there was nothing stopping or preventing ESPN from putting this service on their app, but not making people also be ESPN Unlimited subscribers, at least for a month before they, forcing them to cancel essentially, right? Like that ESPN could have just put MLB TV on their app and then said, hey, if you want any of our other content, sign up for ESPN Unlimited. That would have been the sensible pro-consumer thing to do, but that is not what happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's a world where they could have been like, okay, MLB TV is part of ESPN Unlimited, and if you sign up for this one-time fee, you will have this and MLB TV for the future, and you'll just pay $30 a month going forward.
Right. That is what has happened with the NHL's out-of-market package, right? Like it is just included with ESPN Unlimited. This is not the case with MLB TV.
There's a world where you could be like, okay, we still want that $150. So you pay that one-time fee up front, and then going forward, it's $30 a month. And then you're on that auto renewal where it's just $30 a month from there. That's an idea. I feel for the people that will eventually end up going through this, because there are people who have found out a way to watch their team, but they're also not necessarily on it as online and as involved with sports media intricacies as we are. There's also people who are not on X or Blue Sky or Facebook or whatever who are seeing these things and been like, what's happening here? So those are not the people who are dealing with the FAQs. They're just kind of and kind of seeing what they're getting that auto renew on their email and they're pressing auto renew, or these people are just hey, I want to go watch my team, I'm going to sign up, and not really realizing that. So it's a mousetrap, which I think you and Ben Koo have described it as, and it's just not pro-consumer. And if this is a way that you want not to grow the game, but to this is how ESPN's new partnership with the MLB is starting off in terms of rebranded, remodeling kind of the structure of, hey, we're going to do 30 national games, but we're really wanting to get on local rights. If this is how we're kicking it off, like it's just not like a good start. It just isn't. And I think you lose, even if there are the clarifications. And, I know you spoke to MLB and there's been clarifications since we wrote that article. You're not coming out and building trust right away with the consumer, which is a hard thing to do when there was already a lot of doubt when people saw, oh, ESPN is getting MLB TV, and then immediately they start thinking the worst, like they did with Inside the NBA and like they did with Red Zone. And so this stuff just kind of feeds into that thinking.
And it's, for this one, it's actually justified, right? Like this is completely unnecessary. And something that caught my eye yesterday, the Athletic wrote up, the launch of MLB TV on ESPN, and they had some quotes from an ESPN executive where, and I'm quoting here, he said, "We're also trying to generate as much engagement and interest and subscriptions and activations for our ESPN Unlimited plan." Close quote. So it's like they're not even trying to hide that this is set up almost entirely so they can get more ESPN Unlimited subscribers. Whereas, this very well as an MLB TV subscriber, that was never a requirement before this year. And I think most people, when this deal was announced, just assumed the service would be housed on the ESPN app, which is actually something that would be great. That would be pretty pro-consumer because if you're a sports fan, there's a likelihood that you're just launching the ESPN app on any given night because there's other stuff that isn't baseball that you might want to watch on there. So having it all together in one app is actually really convenient. But, when you're putting it behind a paywall, a separate paywall, it doesn't really help the fan at all. To me, it's just a really sick business tactic. And, I think they have been rightfully criticized for this. And maybe, they were unfairly criticized for the NFL Red Zone stuff earlier, but this time around, I think it's completely justified.
Yeah, the one thing I just wanted to add in top of what we were talking about is I believe Jacob Feldman from Sportico had tweeted out a flowchart where there was like 15 different options in terms of how am I supposed to watch my favorite team. And he also noted this is not even with the RS. I'm not even including the RSNs here.
Right.
So, I mean, you should not have to jump through this many hoops to watch your favorite team. Fortunately, there are a group of people that have already figured that out and can auto-renew, and they are grandfathered into this. But if you're wanting to grow the game, this just isn't the way to do it because you're not, like I just said before, you're not setting off on the right foot with potentially new fans or people who are like, I want to start watching insert team's name this season.
Right. I think it is important to note that, ESPN will be a platform where some of the in-market local rights are available for up to 21 teams, I believe. I do not believe, and I'll probably check with my sources on this. I do not believe those subscribers will have to jump through this ESPN Unlimited loophole. I think those subscribers will just get their in-market rights, not have to deal with the ESPN Unlimited BS. I'm putting up this Jacob Feldman graphic right now because it is just quite absurd. This is Jacob Feldman of Sportico. There are literally 16 different boxes on here, right? This is not how any sports league should be handling it should not be this confusing. And to your point, my dad, who is a big Baltimore Orioles fan, recently moved out of Maryland. And for the holidays, we got him an MLB TV subscription so he could watch the Orioles. And now I'm going to have to get on the phone with him or get on FaceTime with him and explain how to do this without also being charged for the ESPN Unlimited bullshit that he doesn't need. Like, if you're an older gentleman or an older woman who is not reading awful announcing every day or on Twitter, how in the world are you supposed to know that this is happening to you? You're not, and that's just what ESPN is banking on, and it's really, oh god, it just makes me upset.
It makes a lot of people upset. I think we've seen that.
Yeah. All right, Sam. Thank you for hopping on with me on short notice. I think we'll have a big announcement regarding yourself and your more frequent appearances on this very podcast soon enough. So, listeners, viewers, however you're watching, you will be seeing more of Sam here shortly. But that'll do it for us today. We will be back once more this week, breaking down all the sports media news. Thank you for listening and have a good day.